Alright, so Doom Patrol Episode 9, Jane Patrol. I found this episode to be an incredibly fascinating character study as we go into the dark, deep labyrinth that is Jane. Really complex, layered character. And it was really awesome to get to see all the other versions of Jane, all the other personalities. Of course, we didn't see them all, but we got to see some really, really interesting ones. And I can't recount right off the top of my head everybody that we saw, but the ones that we did see were pretty strong. We got some of the creepier ones, and they do go on to explain all kinds of things in here, like some of, like, what was it, Driver 8 Jane goes on to tell them, that some of them don't look like Jane and some of them do, and she doesn't really understand it, but that's the way it works. And they get into issues talking about the primary. Jane's supposed to be the current primary. It used to be Miranda, but Miranda got lost into, we'll get into discussing that later, but she gets lost into the well, and I guess Jane becomes the new default for all the personalities to rely on to be on the surface. They don't really explain why. Sometimes some of them come out and just take over for a little bit, even though Jane's supposed to be the primary. We know what Karen did. We know what Karen did, and I have to say it was really funny to see Karen, dragged there by Hammerhead and confronted by quite a few of Jane's personalities about her behavior, about trying to take over. And when Jane was sort of spying on that confrontation, hearing Karen just say, "Oh, fuck all you hater bitches," it was incredibly funny. Karen was pretty funny this episode. So really, Jane is just kind of brain dead, and the rest of the Doom Patrol trying to figure out what to do, how they resolve this, how they get her back. And meanwhile, down in Janetown, the underground, this vast network of all these personalities, where they live, and how they're connected. Down there, they're trying to convince Jane to go back. And I really like this conversation that Jane and Driver 8 had on the train, where she was asking the driver if she ever thinks about going out there, and the driver's just like, "No, this is my job." I mean, she says sometimes she sees that light at the end of the tunnel and thinks about it, but this is her job. This is what she does. She drives the train. The train's all she knows. But I liked how she actually, when Jane questioned about has the fire, has the emergency stop, has it ever been pulled, and what would happen if it did. And she kind of encourages Jane to pull that switch, so Jane doesn't end up surfacing like the rest of the personalities wanted her to. And she goes on this journey within herself because she's questioning all these things. And down here, there are all different kind of personalities, as the episode states, and some of them look like Jane, some of them don't. And there are all kinds of places in her head where there's just memories, and they don't really know, whose memory is who when it comes down to it. On some of the memories, I don't know about all the memories, but Penny, she goes on to say it doesn't really matter whose memory is who, because we all share the same memories. But the dialogue too, when Jane was on the table and they were discussing how the hell they're supposed to get Jane back, get her to snap out of this, I found that dialogue really great. The dialogue from Cyborg, Robot Man, Negative Man, that dialogue was pretty funny. But down in Janetown it starts to explore the issues between her and her father. It doesn't really flat out spell anything out, but come on, you get it. She was sexually abused, assaulted, and she's when she encounters the three sisters and they tell her to go to the well, those three sisters are pretty creepy. You also get Black Anus. Not Black Anus. Anus. Black Anus. But when Robot Man, it's also cool to see Brendan Fraser because Negative Man puts him into Jane's mind, and you know, he looks like himself. And it was really great to see Brendan Fraser just acting, and he's acting more like Robot Man than Cliff Steele here because, you know, he's a changed person. He's a different man, but he's not. The episode also gets to that where, you know, he's not really a man anymore or the same man anymore. He's Robot Man, you know? He's a changed person and a different person. And there was a lot of funny interactions in here. Robot Man dropping F-bombs, Cliff Steele dropping F-bombs, Brendan Fraser, whatever. Like when he meets Hammerhead, he instantly realizes who he's dealing with. He's like, hey, Hammerhead. So he's getting more familiar with each of the personalities, and that's another thing I liked, that he'll be able to recognize who he's dealing with when it comes down to it, because he's always confused about who he's dealing with, and he's always calling him Jane, but now he's getting to really recognize and separate the personalities from Jane to really distinguish which one he's going to be dealing with. And Penny was really helpful this episode with Robot, not with just Jane, but she was following around Jane, and Jane's reaction to her being followed around by Penny is just that Penny kind of hooks up with Robot Man to team up with him to resolve the whole Jane issue, but she can only go too far because the further you go, the darker it gets, and some of the darker memories are attached to the lighter memories, and she says, you know, it doesn't really make sense, but that's how it is. You can find some of the darkest places right next to some of the lightest, and I found it pretty damn incredible when, you know, they're showing Kay and they're showing Miranda, and they're, you know, alluding to what happened to them, and it was a really powerful episode all around, even in the comedy department, not just for the more emotional, serious stuff, but the comedy stuff, like when Hammerhead throws Robot Man in a cell. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm trying to help Jane. And the conversation between Robot Man and Karen while they're locked in cells, and then when Karen gets let go, he's all pissed off because Karen's getting set free, but not him. He's actually there to help. And he starts hitting that wall, trying to break it open. And then he gets that chisel thrown to him, and then Penny shows up, and they break down that wall together. But there's just so much in here, and there's a lot that I can't really remember right off the top of my head. I'd like to call out, you know, all the best moments and stuff like that. But eventually, you know, Jane does what she always does. She rejects Cliff. Even though she knows he cares, she rejects his help. And and that's just a part of the way she is, you know. But it really gets into their deep bond. The bond between Jane and Robot Man is really strong at this point, and it really shows in this episode. You know, he's there to help. He's there to help. She's like a daughter to him, and I think she recognizes that he's like a father to her, but because what happened with her own father, she rejects that. She rejects that relationship, and it was really cool when she finally gets to the well where the sisters led her to, and Penny was, you know, telling Cliff that, you know, if she goes there, she's never coming back or whatever. That's where the sisters always send people. So, Penny stops going along with them because she's only willing to go. She's not willing to go to the well. But it was really great to see at the end where Jane stands up to her father. He comes out as a big puzzle piece. And that was from the previous episode with Minto. where she got drowned in puzzle pieces, and it was alluding to the whole situation with her father. That when her puzzle father, puzzle man, or whatever you want to call him, picked Robot Man up and bit him in half and threw him on the ground. It looked really great to me. I mean, it looked really powerful, but the most powerful moment is when Jane actually starts yelling at her father, and the reaction, you could tell that he's just kind of stunned. Because as Robot Man said, this is in your mind. None of this is real. This is pretty much whatever she makes of it, and she can't stand up to herself, against her own bad memories, and, try harder, overcome it. And it leads to her father going back into the well and a victory for her. And when they come out, Cliff, Robot Man, he talks about, how he thinks she's going to be a lot better now. But of course, as we all know, she's crazy Jane. She's not going to get better. This whole thing, it kind of, I wouldn't say the whole thing that happened with her father, I wouldn't say that it flat out broke down the door between her and this kind of insanity, but I'd say it kicked the door hard enough to have it hanging off its hinges, and it really just fractured her personality. But, you see, when she goes to lay down, you hear those words again from her father, "my sweet girl," or I can't remember if those were the exact words, but, you can see her eyes get wide, and that this issue isn't resolved. It's never gonna be resolved. It's strongly internally damaging, but I like the way it was handled. And of course, even though it's not gonna completely do away with that. That would be nonsense if a single simple episode completely done away with all the damage that has been done to her. But I liked how it went. She will be slightly better now. Bet they got to unpack a lot of that baggage and really sort it out. And there was a lot of funny stuff in here. There's all the different Janes. It's incredibly fascinating. Even I can't remember which one it was, but Karen's like, "You've never even been up there," and it's. I'm not really sure why they all have a very specific job. That's not really explained, why they all have to have a very specific job, and why some of them never even come to the surface, and why others do come to the surface temporarily. So there's still a lot here to explain, and it's looking pretty strong, though. The actress that plays Jane, Diana Guerrera, I believe that's how you pronounce it. She's absolutely amazing. She's got some very awesome acting skills, man. And it was really awesome to see Brendan Fraser here again. He's still got the acting. He hasn't done much but voiceover for a long time, but he's still got the acting, man. He's still awesome at acting. But other than that, there's really not much to explain. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff, but I found absolutely everything. I'd give this episode probably a solid 10 out of 10 when it comes down to it, because it really was just this fascinating character study, and was complex, layered, and real good payoff, man. So it leaves me really looking forward to the next episode. I didn't like the episode before this. I felt it was weak. I felt it was far too reliant on some social justice message, and it kind of felt like it was more reliant on a social message than really its writing, and I just felt it was weak. And a lot of people didn't like that. They downvoted that video a lot, and I'm sure it's still going to get a lot of downvotes as it becomes more relevant. But you can't like them all, and I'm going to call out episodes when I feel like they're weak. And Doom Patrol is a show that really, really focuses on complex, layered characters. So when I'm getting a character, for instance, the soldier that turned drag, when I'm getting him deciding to be dragged with no context, and then getting a one-dimensional what I felt was a one-dimensional character for the rest of the episode, without really showing, all the other stuff that gives him that depth, makes him more than a one-sided stereotype. Then, but anyways, I'm getting off topic here. So I really liked this episode. I thought it was really awesome. 10 out of 10. I'm pretty sure that there's some things I'm missing in here that I really enjoyed. But anyways, like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you thought about this episode, what you thought about all the Janes, and what you're looking forward to seeing when more of these personalities do start to come out. And because I really want to see, especially the ones that say they never come to the surface, I want to see those ones come to the surface, and I want to understand why they're there if they don't come to the surface. But like, subscribe, stay awesome, comment down below, rock on.